Hi everyone. I wanted to post a quick video going over what we were going to do in class today had we not been canceled due to the snow. So I'm sharing my screen. We're looking at the Canvas course right now. Everything that you need is under modules under week 2. So I'm going to go ahead and pop into the week 2 overview. I'm going to very quickly go over the PowerPoints that I had planned to look at with you in class this morning. I'll go much more quickly than I would have if we were in class and we could actually talk and have some back and forth, because I know it's not fun to listen to somebody speak over PowerPoint on a video. So I'll go really quickly, just try to hit the highest points. And you can read through these. You can download them right here and read through them on your own as well. It's going to cover chapters 3 and 4 in the text. And then at some point this week, I'd like you to do the speech analysis assignment. Some of you have already done this, which is awesome. Thank you. It was supposed to be due today. I've pushed that back to this Sunday so that you have all week to work on it. Normally, we would actually do this in class, watch it in class, and have some time to actually respond and then talk about it. So I've made this due Sunday at 11:59 p.m. If you need more time, if you're having issues getting access to the internet, just let me know. Um, I can be really flexible on the timeline here. So that's what you will work on your own is 2 videos. Both of them are relatively short. I think this is like 5 minutes and this is like a little over 10. And then you have a couple of questions at the very bottom to answer. You can submit your answers right on Canvas. So if you have any questions about that, just let me know. Again, you have until Sunday night. So I want to go ahead and pop into the PowerPoints. If you open them up, you'll notice we always do a warm up at the beginning of class, which of course we won't do. So I'm sort of skipping ahead. And I probably will just really quickly glide through these. So chapter 3 covers public speaking anxiety. So this is, by definition, the fear or anxiety associated with an actual or anticipated oral presentation. And I think most of us feel this to some degree. The question becomes, are you having anxiety to a degree at which you can't complete assignments or do things that need to happen? That's when it becomes a problem. But most of us have, I think, a healthy amount of public speaking anxiety. I think I mentioned this last week, but usually it's just enough that it makes us nervous enough that we'll prepare and be ready for our public speaking engagement. So it can actually be a good thing, as long as it's not out of hand and you're not having adverse side effects from it. So there are lots of things that can cause us to have fear of public speaking. Sometimes it's the fact that we've had no exposure to public speaking, or when we've maybe done public speaking, it didn't go as we had hoped. We have a bad experience that is sort of stuck in our brain that we need to get over. And so there are always things that you can do to deal with this. Of course, the more you do public speaking, the more comfortable you become with it. And of course, preparation and practice is also key. So, a lot of what I think this class is about is really just getting you that practice so that when you have assignments and other courses, or when you go on to, whatever career you are pursuing, you'll be prepared. You'll have that experience under your belt. Some people just don't like getting up in front of groups. They feel uh, conspicuous or self-conscious. They worry about, their movements. They worry about an accent or how they say certain things. Um, I think, one of the easiest ways to get over this is to just know we all feel this way. Everybody is self-conscious, I think, when they're in front of a crowd or in front of a group, or at least most of us. It's probably more abnormal to not feel a little bit self-conscious when we're in front of a group. So just knowing that this is a normal experience, that most of us feel this way, can help. Also, just, feel good about yourself, put on a favorite outfit when you have to public speak. Do anything that will help you feel confident when you get up in front of the crowd, whatever that is. And it could look different for all of us. But just, make sure that you feel good about yourself, because if you feel good about yourself, that will come through to your audience. Speakers also can be sensitive to things that might be wrong with what they're doing, make them feel more conspicuous. So again, it's that being in center stage and having everybody, having all eyes on you can make many of us nervous. Um, but again, we're always harder on ourselves than our audience is going to be on us. So if you are nervous about, your gestures or your hand movements, or one thing that I've had happen in speeches is I might have, a term that I have trouble enunciating and I'm worried I'm going to trip over some, particular word. We're always more critical on ourselves than our audience will be on us. So keep that in mind. And, we'll continue coming back to this, but just practice, whatever it is that you're nervous about, get that extra practice in. And then put the focus on the speech and not on you. So again, your audience is interested in what you're saying. Yes, they'll see you. Yes, you're in front of them, but really focus on the speech and try not to worry too much about movements or, your personal, um, you know, feelings. The other important thing is, if you do have speech anxiety, is to try to figure out what type of speech anxiety you have. So when do you get nervous? And there are really four different, stages at which point people can get nervous. Now, I'm just going to kind of talk through these on this slide. There are several slides after this that sort of, break these out. Read through those, but I'm just going to kind of talk through them. So you can get that pre-preparation anxiety. So for those of you who get nervous just knowing that you have a speech coming up, so if if we had class last Monday and we talked about the how-to or the demonstration speech, if you started to get nervous at that point, you might have pre-preparation anxiety. This can sometimes cause us to procrastinate because we are dreading giving the speech. So therefore we put off preparing for the speech, or choosing a topic, or really anything that has to do with it. So try to be aware if you might fall into this category, because you want to make sure that if you're prone to procrastinate, um, you want to get over that you want to maybe make a schedule, break down when you're going to do certain things for the speech, so that you're not saving it all for the night before. Um, Preparation anxiety could happen to those of you who start to get nervous once you begin to prepare the speech. So maybe not before, maybe you didn't procrastinate, but then once you're into it, you start to get really nervous about what you're going to say. And sometimes that can cause us to sort of too narrowly focus on little things. We get caught up in the tiny details. Um, if that sounds like something that happens to you, again, I think practice and having that schedule to make sure that you're not rewriting the introduction for 2 weeks on end, but you're staying on schedule. You've got your introduction done on this date, you've got the body of the speech done by this date, you're completely done by this date, and you have x amount of time to practice before the actual speech is due. So again, just having that schedule, knowing when you're going to, have certain things ticked off your to-do list for the speech, can really help if you get that preparation anxiety. I think probably most of us fall more into the second two categories of public speaking anxiety, and that's pre-performance and performance anxiety. So personally, I tend to get pre-performance anxiety. So the night before, the morning of, right before I go on stage, that's when I'll start to get the butterflies in my stomach a little bit. Once I'm on stage, I'm fine, but I always feel that little bit of nervousness just before I have a big engagement that I need to speak at. Some of us might get nervous actually during the speech. For both of these, the solutions or the techniques that you can employ to help ease this type of anxiety are very similar. So pre-performance and performance, be sure you're breathing. You can do, well, during our warm-ups in class, we'll go through a couple of different breathing exercises that can help. A lot of the things you can do are things that we do for stress. So, if you get pre-performance anxiety and you know that, the night before you're going to be a bit of a wreck, maybe plan your workout later in the evening to get some of those nervous jitters out. You might need to maybe plan, a morning yoga session before your speech to, again, sort of help stretch, breathe, and help get some of that stress and anxiety out. So over the course of the semester, we'll do lots of warm-up activities with different techniques you can employ for some of this pre-performance and performance anxiety, if that is where you fall in the spectrum. So again, I'm going to kind of go through, I'm just going to click through. You can read these. This is what I was just talking through, but you can come through and read them on your own as well. All in all, the best advice is to prepare and practice. So regardless of which type of anxiety you have of the four that we just talked about, the most important thing is being prepared as soon as possible and rehearsing your speech as many times as possible. So the practice will help you feel more confident. It'll help you feel comfortable again with some of those things like movement and, nervousness about, am I going to, pronounce this word correctly? If you can, rehearse in front of a group. If you've got friends or family that you can stand up in front of and do your speech, that helps greatly. Um, you might even record yourself. If you don't have an audience, you could just set up your phone or your tablet, record yourself giving the speech, and then, play it back, watch it. Um, Look for things that you think you might want to change. But in all, just overwork your fear of public speaking. So practice, practice, practice. The speech will become almost second nature to you, so that even if you're nervous when you stand up, you've done it so many times, you just kind of go into autopilot because you've practiced so much. In addition to that, try to modify thoughts and attitudes. So try to visualize a positive experience, the speech going well. Remember that, you're doing something for the audience. You're either imparting knowledge, you're giving them, you're going to give them valuable information. Um, that is a good thing. They will be happy about that. So try to focus on those positives. um Avoid the negative self-talk like, oh oh my god, I know this speech is going to go horribly, nobody's going to like it. Avoid that. Stay positive with yourself. And again, as I said, visualize good things. Don't visualize tripping as you walk on the stage. Visualize a positive experience. And then the more positive experience you have with public speaking, the easier this becomes. So this is why in class we'll do so much standing up and so much, getting up in front of one another, because the more positive experiences we have in front of crowds, the easier it will become. The anxiety that we get in terms of how we feel before public speaking is really a fight or flight response, right? Our evolution still can't tell the difference between, a lion chasing us and something like standing up in front of a group of people. We have that same reaction. Physically, our bodies, your heart might race, your breathing might increase. All of these things, you have a physical reaction to this. So try to practice techniques that will allow you to relax that fight or flight response. Again, um, yoga, meditation, working out, something the night before or maybe the morning of. Breathing exercises. We'll practice again on many breathing exercises. As you practice your speech, figure out what feels natural to you so that you can, move. You're not rigid when you're up there. Moving releases tension, it keeps your muscles loose, and all of that can help reduce some of that fight or flight anxiety, some of those physical manifestations of our nervousness. And learn from feedback. That's part of what this class is about, is getting practice and learning to listen to the positive feedback and the critical feedback. We need both, right? We don't need just criticism, but we don't need just, hey, you did everything great, don't change a thing. We need both. We need to know what we're doing well, and we need to know where we could improve. So, that will be important this semester too, is listening to the feedback from me and from your peers. It'll be important to provide good feedback to your peers. And this means, giving your peers ideas of where you think they might improve. This is why we'll do it anonymously, because it can be very difficult to do that. We want to make everybody feel good, right? And you want to tell them what they're doing well, but you also want to tell them where you think they could improve for next time. It doesn't behoove any of us to just focus on, hey, you're awesome, you're awesome, you're awesome. We want to know where we're awesome, but we also want to know where we're lacking so that we can improve. Okay, and then the first, again, we normally would watch the first part of the speech analysis. This is, I think, a very funny, short TED Talk about stage fright. Hopefully you'll enjoy that, so you'll watch that when you do the speech analysis. And then the second chapter that we were going to talk about today was about listening, being a listener, a good listener, and a good speaker. They go hand in hand. So again, successful communication, you need to be able to not only speak and send your message to a receiver, but you need to learn how to listen. And you need to know what can get in the way of that communication between a speaker and a receiver, or a group of receivers and audience. So hearing and listening are two different things. When we talk about hearing, we are just talking about the physiological act of noise registering into our ears and our brain acknowledging that we hear something. Doesn't mean that we're comprehending it, but we hear it. I was talking a little while, when I was in the beginning of this video, I heard dogs barking down there. So I heard it, but I was trying to stay focused on something else. So hearing is just the physiological. Listening is when we actually are receiving the message, trying to incorporate it, understand it, comprehend it. And listening refers to hearing, or I'm sorry, listening, comprehending not only the oral or spoken messages, but also the nonverbal messages that we receive from other people. So both of those things are part of communication, and it's important to know the difference. So most of us have selective perception, and we probably know this, right? We pay attention selectively, and we ignore other things. This is actually good because, again, when I was talking earlier, I heard the dogs barking downstairs, but I was able to ignore it and continue on with what I needed to focus on. So it's not a bad thing necessarily. This is an ability for us to sort of weed out what we don't need to hear and focus on what we do need to hear. Now, the problem is sometimes we don't make good decisions about what to zone out and what to listen to. So these are some factors that influence selective perception. So we tend to pay attention to things that we find interesting. We tend to pay attention to things that we need to know. So, you might have an easier time paying attention if you believe there's a quiz coming up on, material in a class, whereas, as opposed to you think that this material might never come back up, you might not need to know it. So you might not pay as close attention. And then we also selectively choose what to pay attention to based on our values, attitudes, and beliefs. It's easier for us to listen and pay attention to things that we already agree with. We'll talk more about this um, as we go through. So we can take steps to counteract some of the selective perception that we naturally do in communication. As listeners, we want to maintain an open mind and listen with empathy. So again, we want to not simply just shut down on listening as soon as we hear something we disagree with. We want to try to, keep that open mind as an audience and as a listener. And as speakers, we want to approach speech as an opportunity to achieve understanding with the audience. So we don't want to shove our ideas down our audience's throats. We want to, try to approach the audience again with empathy, with an open mind, and with some degree of objectivity so that we don't turn listeners off. We don't turn the audience off by coming on too strongly. Much like in writing, speakers can anticipate obstacles to listening. Listeners can also anticipate these. So, some things that cause distractions that we can try to sort of minimize are environmental noise. So, this is the dogs barking in the background, or if we were in class on campus, if the dump truck came during class and you hear that, loud loud truck and the beeping when it backs up. Those are all environmental noises, and we can take some steps to lessen these, shutting the door when we're in class, um, trying to, create an environment with as few of these as possible. We can never completely get rid of them in most situations. There are always going to be some noise getting in between us as speakers and our listeners or our audience. There are also the internal noises that happen for our audience members or us when we're the audience. Multitasking attempts. So oftentimes, if you're a part of an audience and you're trying to listen, you might also trying to be doing something else. You might trying to be, making a grocery list or checking your phone for a message that you're waiting on. So it's important that we try to minimize these. And especially in a speech class when we are the audience, we want to be extremely respectful of our speakers and give them our full attention, since this is, of course, a venue in which we all want to get better and practice. And so that includes being better listeners and practicing being a better listener and a better audience member. And what I try to, again, as listeners, as audience members, avoid defensiveness. So again, if you are listening to a speech, particularly this term in our class, and the speaker is, giving a speech on a topic and you disagree with their stance, try to sort of withhold judgment. Try to hear them out. By the end of it, you may still disagree with them, but at least listen to their full argument. And then you can have a healthier disagreement because you can, sort of say, okay, I understand where they're coming from. I hear what they're saying. I understand their point of view. I just disagree with it because of X, Y, and Z. So again, making that effort to be a good listener. So again, distractions could be coming from both internal and external places. So things that we hear in the environment and our own thoughts. And so we want to make a conscious effort to keep our environment as clear of distractions as possible, and to make sure that we're ready to listen when a speaker begins. Okay. Just don't multitask during speeches in our class. Sometimes, and this is just a tip for any class that you're in, but sometimes if you really have your brain stuck on something and it's making it difficult for you to concentrate on the class at hand or the lecture that you're supposed to be listening to, it is fine to just jot down a note, like after class, remember to call the doctor, or whatever it is that's weighing on your mind. Sometimes just the quick act of writing that down will free your mind of that distraction. But don't be working on a homework assignment during another student's speech or texting or something like that, unless there's some emergency. Um, when we're in class together on speech day, never walk into the class. The door will be closed. If you come in late on a speech day, never just walk in the middle of someone's speech. That's extremely distracting. Always stand at the door, wait till you hear the speaker end, hear the applause from the audience, and then come in between speeches. So that's just a sort of, common courtesy that we can extend to one another. Oh, lost my cursor here. There it is. All right, and my mouse died. There we go. Guard against script writing and defensive language. So this is what I was saying before about trying to sort of check our defensiveness when we are listening to a speaker who is, speaking on a topic from a perspective with which we disagree, which is likely to happen because the very last speech that we give in this class is a persuasive speech. Of course, if we're doing a persuasive speech, we're dealing with issues where people tend to be on two different sides. And again, it's fine to disagree with one another, but you want to hear the speaker out. You want to listen to their argument rather than just assuming that you know where they're going, what they're going to say next. Actually listen to what they say. It may be different than what you think. Their arguments or their position for feeling a certain way may be different than what you expect or what you thought. So that's what we call defensive listening, is that decision that you won't like what the speaker is going to say, so you'll just stop listening. We don't want to do that. We want to hear one another out and listen to what the speaker is saying. Again, at the end of a speech, you may still disagree. That's life. We can disagree respectfully. That's an okay thing. We just want to make sure that we're always doing that respectfully and giving our peers the benefit of our full attention rather than tuning them out from the get-go. We always want to be sensitive to cultural barriers when listening to a speech. Sometimes in certain situations, if a speaker is speaking a dialect or has an accent, sometimes we can struggle to understand. In those situations, focus as much as you can on the message rather than focusing in on, an accent that maybe you're struggling with. Do your best to hear and understand. And then you can always ask questions at the end if you still need clarification. Most of the time we have a Q&A period after most speeches, or if you're in a class and the instructor is lecturing, just make sure you get that clarification at the end if you did struggle with some aspect of the speaker's delivery. You can also take some steps to help us listen, to help us practice these skills. Set listening goals for yourself. If you, for example, are taking a class and it's a topic that you struggle with, you might set a goal for yourself that, at the break or, after class, before I even leave, I'm going to write myself a short summary to make sure that I really did hear. And then if at the end, if I don't have a good summary, I can get clarification before I leave the room. Listen for main ideas. Maybe before a speech or before a lecture in a class, you say, okay, I'm going to try to, mentally jot down or check off when I hear main ideas, things that I want to remember. And then watch for the speaker's nonverbal clues. We'll do a lot more work with nonverbals throughout the semester. But this can also, tell us a lot, and it can convey a lot. And again, above all else, just avoid the cognitive dissonance, that defensive thinking that we tend to fall into. Okay. So, dialogic communication is the open sharing of ideas in an atmosphere of respect. Both parties should reach conclusions together. The speaker should see opportunity for mutual understanding with the audience rather than trying to win the argument. And listeners should maintain open minds and listen with empathy. So, again, this will become most important when we get to the final speech, the persuasive speech. And this is what we're aiming for. We're aiming for a dialogic communication where both the speaker is being empathetic to the audience and the listeners are being empathetic to the speaker. It doesn't mean we agree at the end, but it means that we're going to hear one another out. And that's the important thing to remember. So again, I tried to keep this quick. That was a very sort of whirlwind coverage of the PowerPoints for this week. Again, you can open these up, save them, read through them. It covered chapters 3 and 4 if you want to actually look through the book too. Next week, we will be looking at chapter 5, so you might want to preview that ahead of class. In class next week, we will be doing our second in-class speech, which will be peer introductions. We'll go over chapter 5, and we'll also take our first review quiz, which will cover everything up until week 3. The review quiz it's called a quiz. It's really more of a homework assignment. It's open book. We'll have time to begin it or work on it next week in class, but it is open book, open note. You can take it twice, use any resources that you need to take it. And that will actually open up next Monday, but it will be open for a week. So we'll have time in class to work on it, but you can also work on it or complete it at home as well. I think that's everything for the day. Hopefully, this will help keep us on track. But if you have questions, feel free to shoot me an email, let me know. Otherwise, I will see all of you in class next week. Thanks.